Hello guys, welcome to this video. In this video, I'm going to teach you about functions in Python, how to create your own function in Python, and how to run the code within that function. And also, I am going to teach you about two built-in functions in Python. Those two built-in functions are print function and input function. So if I say what function is, as simply, function is a container of some code. It can be 100 lines of code or 1000 lines of code. In which situations what we have to use function? Think, I need to run 10 lines of code 4 times. Then I have to write that code, that 10 lines of code 4 times. Then I have to write 40 lines of code in my Python file. So don't want to do it, because that 40 lines of code does the same thing 4 times. To decrease the lines, we can use function. For example, I took that I have 10 lines of code and I run that code 4 times. Then I have to write 40 lines of code. So to decrease that 40 lines of code to 10 lines of code, keep that lines only 10, we have to use functions. So we define the function first and we put some code to execute, and we can run the function many times as we need. For example, in my example, I have 10 lines of code. Then I can define the function that contains that 10 lines of code, and we can run the function 4 times, right? We only get 10 lines for the definition of the function and additional 4 lines to execute the function 4 times. We do every execution of the function within only 15 lines of code, because 10 lines of code we have within the function, and function definition takes 1 line of code. So let's create a new Python function to create a username. Always remember to use meaningful names for your function. If I create a function to create a username, I name my function name as create username, like that. So let's create that function, create username. Now to create a function, we need to use def keyword. Put def keyword. After that, we need to put the function name. In this example, I name my function as create username. After the function name, we need to put parentheses. So put that, right? And after the parentheses, we need to put the colon. Now hit enter button. Now you can see cursor is blinking 1 tap from the start of the line. So that tells us we are inside of the create username function. Now to create a username, we need 2 values. Those are first name and last name. When you sign up for a website, then they ask you to enter username. And if I take an example of creating a Google account, it asks us to enter first name and last name. So like that, I take first name and last name from the user to create the full username. I set my first name as Rukshan. Now I put last name to remove the. Now I create another variable to hold the full username. So I name that variable as username. Then I need to combine that first name and last name to get the username, complete username. I do that by adding first name with a space and last name to that first name and a space. Right, we have created a function that contains 3 lines of code, and now this function have 2 values, first name and last name, and combined them together to give us a username. Now the username contains in username variable. To see the username, we have to use a Python built-in function, which is print function. So print function we use to show something to the user on the console, not on the GUI. So let's print our username using print function. So print function takes our value as an argument. So let's put our value to print. The value that we need to print is stored in username variable. So I create username and I hit enter. Now you can see we are still inside of the function. Now we need to get out from the function to execute the code within that function. To get out from the function, we need to create this tab space and put 2 lines after the function definition. So now we are going to execute the code within that function. To execute the code within a function, any function, we need to use that function name with parentheses. This is how we do that. Our function name is create username, and after that we need to put parentheses. Now in line 8 we have told to the interpreter to execute the all line of code within that create username function. Now let's run this Python file, then you can see the output on the console. See my username from first name and last name prints on the console. Now what about when we need to change this first name and last name in the second execution term of this function? I duplicate this line by pressing Ctrl D in PyCharm. Then you can duplicate the same line. So now you can see line 8 executes function, and also line 9 executes that create username function. When we run this Python file, it gives us same names, but how we need to update this username? So I can also change these values, but if we change this to some person's name, famous person name, and I see the output by running this Python file, then we get the same name. How do we change the values within the function? To do that, we use parameters. Parameters are also kind of a variable that holds values for the functions. To use parameters, we need to put them within the parentheses of the function name. Go to the function definition and put parameters within the parentheses. So I put my parameters as this. Now I have created 2 parameters. First parameter is first name and the second parameter is last name. Now we can change our first name to first name parameter and the last name to last name parameter. Whatever value we pass to these parameters are stored in this first name and the last name. Then we produce the username by combining them together and print that username on the console. Now you can put your values to these parameters in the function call line. I put my name Rukshan as first parameter and Vimukti as second parameter. Now in the second line, second function caller, I put Alan as first parameter and the worker as second parameter. Now when we run this, we get the Rukshan Vimukti and Alan Walker on the console. Right now you know how to update the value within a function using parameters. Now we have more one thing to do, that is we show only the username, but we don't give any value to the outside of the function. How we do this? To give any value from inside of the function to the outside, we have to use another keyword, that is return. Return keyword takes some value within the function and gives that value to the outside of the function, so we can then catch that value using a variable. So let's see how to do that. I clear this print line because I don't need that line anymore. I use return keyword to return some value from the function. I return username because we passed the first name and last name as parameters and we combine them together to get the username, and we need to return the username from this function. Now this function returns the username. Now we need to store that returned username inside of a variable. To do that, we create a variable before the function call and assign function call to that variable. Now I put username 1 variable and assigned this function caller to that variable, and also I put username 2 for the second username. Now this executes the function, gets the return value and stores it in username 1. This function returns the Alan Walker as username and stores that username in username 2 variable. Now we can print those usernames using print function, username 1 and username 2. Then I run application, so you can see we get the same result, Rukshan Vimukti and Alan Walker on the console. Now we only pass some values, right? We directly pass values to these function callers. Now let's get this first name and last name from the user. To do that, we use input function. Now let's use that. We don't need to pass some values directly to this function, so we get input from user and we pass that value to this function callers. So what I need to do is I need to use input function. To do that, I put input. Now this accepts one argument or one parameter, that is prompt message. If you open a Windows command prompt or terminal on Linux, you can see some message prompting to us. This is the location where I am, and it waits me to input some commands. So when I put help, it is a command, and I hit enter, then it shows me the list of commands that we can use in this command prompt. So we can use this input function to take an input from user. I use my prompt message as enter your first name, and I store that in first name, and I duplicate this line and I change this first to last name, and I now pass this first name as first parameter of the function and the last name as second parameter of the function. Now let's run this application. I don't need to run this second line, and I clear this line also. Now let's run this Python file. Let's put some colon after the name and a space. Now I put first name as Ellen, and it asks me to enter the last name. I put that as Walker, and when I hit enter, it creates the username and prints that to the user. Now you can see we prints the Alan Walker on the console. So I think you have learned how to show something to the user and how to get input from user using built-in print function and input function, and also how to create your own Python functions and return some value from it and update the value inside of the function using parameters. So if you have any question about this video, if you have something that you can't understand, put that in the comment section below, then I try to reply as I can. If you like this video, please give a like to the video, and if you need to learn more about programming using my YouTube channel, please subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to click on the bell icon, otherwise you won't get any notification when I uploaded any video to the YouTube. So if you have some friend who likes to learn programming, share this video to your friends. And this is all for this video, guys. I'll see you next video.